Two case studies. Before considering the broader data beyond our culture, two case studies are presented next to illustrate what positive pederasty can look like, given that it does occur with some frequency as per the review just presented. Putting a face on positive cases can be valuable given their counterintuitive nature for a society whose main source for such anecdotes is the mainstream media, whose strong filter permits only presentation of negative cases, often of sensationalistic nature. West, 1998. Both cases concern men, one gay, one straight, of accomplishment, to which their boyhood pederastic experiences, based on friendship and mentoring, contributed. Case 1. Gavin Lambert, 1924 to 2005, was a screenwriter, novelist, and biographer who came from an upper-middle-class home in England. At age 10, he showed musical talent and won a scholarship to St. George's Preparatory School at Windsor Castle, Rapp 2005. Toward the end of his long life, Lambert, 2000, described his early homosexual unfolding and his pederastic relationship at the prep school. After entering St. George's, Lambert developed a friendship with another boy named Ramelkamp, who was also, quote, already adjusted to a homosexual future, unquote, page 13. Lambert commented on the positive nature of each of their sexual initiations with adult men. Quote, we once compared notes on our sexual initiations. Ramelkamp's at the age of 10 went with a workman when he was on summer holiday with his parents in Cornwall. Mine at the age of 11 with a music teacher at my preparatory school, St. George's, and agreed that we'd felt no shame or fear, only gratitude, unquote, page 13. Lambert provided a lengthy description of his own initiation. He noted that before entering the boarding school and meeting the teacher at age 11, he already knew his homosexual orientation, quote, and never questioned it, unquote, page 28. He recalled that his, quote, teacher lover made what happened between them seem completely natural, telling him that, quote, they understood in ancient Greece, unquote, page 29. Lambert wrote that the sexual relationship, quote, not only made me feel superior to the people who wouldn't or couldn't understand. Having to sneak out the dormitory to my teacher's bedroom was exciting and made him even more attractive, unquote, page 29. He added that, quote, soon after falling in love with him, I fell in love with the movies, unquote, page 29. The teacher gratified his new appetite for the movies by taking him to one every Thursday afternoon, which constituted the beginnings of his eventual career as a screenwriter. The affair continued for the next 18 months. Then, when returning from Christmas holidays, he found his teacher lover gone. The new headmaster fired him, and several other teachers thought to be sexually involved with pupils. The headmaster interrogated young Lambert, who, quote, lied with a clear conscience, unquote, about whether he was sexually involved with the teacher, and who felt, quote, violated when the headmaster spoke of violation, unquote, page 30. Initially, afterward, he felt abandoned by his teacher lover, who was by then far more important to him emotionally than his parents were. But he didn't feel betrayed, just disappointed not to have at least received a letter, until one of the other abandoned boys explained that that would have been too risky. Lambert summed up his feelings at the time and more than 60 years later. Quote, for several years I had fantasies of a passionate reunion when we met again by chance. It never happened. Perhaps he was killed in the war. Just possibly he has survived to read this after turning 90. In any case, he is still remembered, an unfaded photograph in the mind's eye as my first love and the first love I lost, unquote, page 31. Some years later, he read Plato's Symposium and was especially moved by Agathon's praise of love, whom Agathon described as the most blessed of all gods, who empties us of all unneighborliness, fills us with intimacy, in wreck is a pilot, in time of dread is a shipmate, is the best of drinking companions, and is the noblest champion in debate. Upon reading this passage, Lambert recalled that it, quote, brought to my mind my music teacher and made me realize exactly what he meant by saying they understood in ancient Greece, unquote. Page 44. Case 2. Heinz Kohut, 1913 to 1981, was a leading theorist and practitioner of psychoanalysis, known for his work on narcissism and the self, as well as his writings on his patient, Mr. Z, who was actually Kohut himself, Strozier, 2001. In his biography of Kohut, Strozier, 2001, discussed young Kohut's pederastic experience in a chapter entitled The Tutor. Kohut grew up in Vienna in the 1920s. When he was age 11, his parents' marriage was deteriorating, but he, quote, survived the fragmentation of the family quite well, in no small part due to the lucky presence of a warm-hearted tutor named Ernst Moravec, who entered his life just as his mother left it, unquote. Strozier, 2001, page 23. His mother hired Moravec, a university student in his early 20s, to be young Kohut's companion and provide him with intellectual stimulation. Most afternoons after school, Moravec took Kohut to a museum, an art gallery, or the opera, or they simply read together and talked about interesting subjects. As Kohut later put it, quote, I had this private tutor who was a very important person in my life. He would take me to museums and swimming concerts, and we had endless intellectual conversations and played complicated intellectual games and played chess together. I was an only child, so it was in some ways psychologically life-saving for me. I was very fond of the fellow, unquote, page 24. Kohut found in Moravec's companionship, connection, and deep empathy. He later described those years with his tutor as extremely happy ones, perhaps the happiest years of his life. He idealized his tutor, who was a spiritual leader, able to share his almost religious love for nature as well as teach him about literature, art, and music. That was a quote, page 24. Thereby making him appreciate nature and culture far ahead of his age or his peers. The relationship became sexual, at first kissing and hugging, and then tender mutual fondling and mutual oral sex. Kohut put his relationship with Moravec into the context of the ancient Greeks, about whom he was beginning to read in depth. In retrospect, he felt that the sexual aspect had no effect on his own sexual identity, which was firmly heterosexual. What was important was the emotional connection. This experience formed the basis for his later theorizing, in which he contradicted Freud, who had said that the self is constructed by vagaries and development of the sex instinct. Kohut reversed this, saying that the need for emotional connection precedes sex. Sexuality just symbolizes and concretizes our deepest needs.